Great. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Law Committee meeting for November 17th, 2021. Majority Council, would you mind taking roll quickly?
Sure, Madam Chairwoman. Ms. Platsky?
Thank you. Present.
Cunningham? Oh, sorry. Cunningham?
Here.
Bergdorf?
Here.
Feeney?
Here.
Kuhn?
Here.
Mayo?
Here.
Peter?
Here.
Ricard?
Present.
And Wayland?
Oh, I'm here. Hi. Hello.
All
There
present,
you
Madam
are.
Chairwoman.
All right.
Great. Thank you so much. Have you had a chance to review the minutes, and is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bergdorf. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ricard. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Minutes pass unanimously. I'd like to hop up to item number 11 with Eugenia Condon to talk to us about the Westlaw Legal Research Software contract. Ms.
Thank you
Condon,
very much, Madam Chairwoman.
Great. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you? This is a renewal of our Westlaw contract that the legal services contracts in the county have. I appeared before the legislature last year for the Westlaw request. It is higher this year than last year because we have had to increase the number of users as a result of an increase in attorneys in the county as departments have increased their lines. We did an assessment and each department, several departments needed to increase the number of users. So we met with Westlaw and went through our case numbers and increased the numbers. While the overall cost went up, they reduced the per attorney rate from $110 per attorney per month to $101.99 per attorney per month to compensate for the additional cost. This contract covers every attorney in the county that departments want to have covered. Pretty much every department is on it. It provides coverage for all of the attorneys. It is their research tool. It provides CLEs for them. It's a comprehensive research tool that's used by the district attorney's office, the public defenders, alternate public defenders, the county attorney, immigration services, and 18B department. We, to the extent we can, we reimburse for these services. So that's why in terms of billing, if you look at the backup, it's set out by each department because the public defender receives his own bill and his grants funding pays for his share. The conflict defender appears on my bill, but I bill back to her and the conflict defender is able to receive grant funding for her share, as is the Director of Immigration Services and the Director of 18B Services. In my department, a large percentage of my attorneys provide services for the Department of Social Services and Children, Youth, and Families. For those direct court services, I charge back to those departments and they pay under the Medicaid for Westlaw services. So we, to the extent we can, we reimburse as much of this as possible.
Any sense how many attorneys this covers and how much
So
of that is reimbursed?
So the contract, we expanded it to 125 attorneys. The district attorney, I don't know the extent to which grants cover their attorneys. All of the public defenders are covered. In my department, I have 40 licenses in my department. At least half of my department, half of the licenses that I control are likely reimbursable. What is in my department, I cover my staff as well as the other staff that are not under public defender. So the ones that are in mine are the legislative council, sheriff's council, and then I charge back.
Okay.
So it's likely half.
Okay, great. Are there any questions from Ms. Condon? Is there a motion?
I'll make the
So
motion.
moved.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Mayo, second by Mr. Bergdorf. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nope. Thank you. Thanks, Ms. Condon. Passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
You're welcome. Take care. Item number 12, Ms. Ziegler, could you please talk to us about this addendum?
Thank you so much, Madam Chairman. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you so much for putting me on your agenda at the last minute. We had entered into a contract with New York State Department of Health in the spring for the fourth of 5 years. And then they decided this summer to give us some additional money. It's an initial $10,000 per county, and it's very specifically directed toward the equity agenda. So for example, we would be looking to work with a partner who is probably working with folks who are underserved. That could be people of color and or LGBTQ folks in our community. It also is $10,000 for Schenectady and $10,000 for Oneida County. So it was a very last minute addition. They sent the email out on Friday. And so I appreciate your flexibility on this. They wanted the contract signed ASAP. So if you are amenable, I would ask if it could be sent for signature as soon as possible, because they do want this wrapped up. But this is going to allow us to do more work. We're targeting our Safer Bars project. So we really looked at like the business district around all Lark Street and Pearl, but we'd like to get more into communities of color and maybe some more LGBTQ bars, particularly around the safety issues around their patrons.
Very good. Are there any questions from Ms. Ziegler? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Ricard, second by Mr. Feeney. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, thank you. Passes unanimously. More money is a good thing. Thank you, Ms. Ziegler.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you. Take care. You too. All right, let's go back in order to item number 2. This is going to be tabled at the request of sponsor about the Mohawk Hudson Bike and Hike Trail. Item number 3, also tabled at the request of sponsor. This is for safe disposal of opioid medications. I'm going to come back to 4. Item 5, local law A for the Tourism Improvement District. I believe this is also tabled at request of sponsor. Item number 6 is local law K, which is obviously also tabled at request of sponsor. Let's go through the resolutions quick. So let's hop to item number 8, if you could please. Resolution 447, amending the budget to provide for the commissions on redistricting.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, we're doing this again. Excuse me. So that may be encumbered for their operating expenses for next year. This is not an additional amount. We've learned that the commission's been doing some good work. They've been working very diligently. They have a council RFP, which is coming back on the 29th of November. And they have an RFP for demographics going out next week. So we applaud the work they're doing so far. And we're looking forward to their work product for next year.
Very good. Are there questions?
Yeah, can I ask Andrew a question while you had the floor on redistricting? Have they elected themselves a chair?
I can handle that, Chairman. Sorry, Madam Chairwoman as well, if you don't mind.
Certainly.
They have Larry Volk, who I believe is from Bethlehem.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Is there, yes, Mr. Feeney?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bergdorf. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We'll keep you posted.
Thank you. Item 449, hearing on local law M, about forest lands. I don't believe Mr. Purley is on this evening. Okay, so this will be tabled, correct, Majority Council?
Yes, as he's the prime sponsor.
Thank you. So 9 and 10 are both tabled. And let's go back to item 4, which is Mr. Fine's local law L, concerning access to counsel during eviction proceedings in housing courts in Albany County. Mr. Fine, would you like to say some words on this?
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman. Yeah, so as we all know, this is a major issue that's especially been exacerbated by the upcoming, when the eviction moratorium ends in January, we're going to have an issue with a lot of people who are facing eviction and are not going to have, unfortunately, you're not going to have the representation that they need to make sure that they get a fair case. And so we're lucky that the state has actually announced they're providing some resources, $25 million total throughout the state, going towards legal counsel for people facing eviction. We just found out within the last couple of days that the Legal Aid Society of Northeastern New York is going to get $4 million of that. That's for the region that covers basically all of Northeastern New York. So I think that's a good sign, but we're still going to be, I think we still have some research to do on exactly, if we were to move forward with this, how much it would cost to fill those gaps to ensure that we can provide counsel to everyone facing an eviction. So, I view this as something that both is extremely important, especially now because of COVID and what's happened with housing and the stall on evictions, but also long term. But this is just a public hearing. I think it's a really good opportunity for us to hear the public come speak about why it's important to them, the impacts it'll have, and then we can go from there.
Are there questions for Mr. Fine?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Bergdorf.
how do we go forward with a local law without a fiscal impact note, or based on what I've seen in the upcoming budget, there is no fiscal appropriation for anything like this. So I'm not quite sure how we proceed.
Well, to move the local law forward, we would need a fiscal impact statement. So we're working on getting those numbers, but I think it's important to move the public hearing forward so we can get the process rolling, and so we can hear. It's a very important and relevant issue, and I think it's important to hear from the public on it.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but to publish a law and give people the impression that this is what we are going to go with, when we know that it's not economically feasibly possible in the 22 budget, and there's no sense of how to pay for it. Plus, I'm not sure that, I have some philosophical issues with it as well, but I've never voted against a public hearing, but I wouldn't want people to think that this was going to happen, especially with the state moving in this direction. If the state's going to do this, let the state pay for it. Why should this be an Albany County responsibility?
Well, I have a few responses. One, I think when we put it forward a public hearing, it's not saying this is something we're necessarily moving forward. It means, I think the public takes it as this is something we're considering and we want to hear the public's input. And I wouldn't say that it's not possible in 2022. We need to move forward and get some numbers on exactly what it would cost. And then we'll see if we're able to find the money. Remember, we also do have $29 million more coming in 2022 from the federal government for ARP funding. So there are some possibilities of where the money could come from that we'll have to sort out, of course. And, thirdly, the state is not moving forward. There is a bill in the state legislature to do this, but we don't know whether or not, or if it does pass, when it will pass session. The state is providing some money right now to address, because they recognize that this is a major issue. So to address a portion of this issue to try to, lessen the impact. But I think it's still something that's important for us to consider, both for the immediately and for the long term. But I'll just stress again, this is a public hearing. There are questions, of course, those are legitimate questions, some of those, but that's, I think something to figure out later in the process.
We have a few hands up, so I'm going to go to Mr. Feeney, then Ms. Whalen.
Yeah, Sam, I don't really have a problem too much about, the concept of this. I think that most likely they're going to do something at the state level, but I'm a little uncomfortable with even moving forward with the public hearing without having any kind of fiscal on it. We have no idea what this is going to cost us. And you're going to have people who are going to come in and talk about it. That's fine. But without
us having any idea what it's going to cost the county if we move forward with this. I just think it's premature. Until we have that information, I just don't think we should even move forward even with the public hearing at this point. We get that information and then I say we do it. That's my
Mr.
thought.
Fudd, do you have an estimate on when you might have it, or
Well, I
how's it
spoke-
going?
I mean, I spoke with the executive director of the Legal Aid Society today. She's going to send me some information on potentially, what something like this would cost. I know that based on some other cities and counties that have done similar types of things, it would cost, and this is a rough estimate, it would cost somewhere in the range of $500,000 to $1 million a year. But I also want to stress there's state funding coming in as well. So we'd have to factor that in because it would probably be significantly less than that once you factor in the state funding. But again, I think I've been in this body for, I think, about 6 years. I know we've put forward public hearings on issues before we have the exact, cost down. I think, especially on an issue like this that is so pressing at the moment, it's important for us to hear from the public, and we might learn some valuable information from the public that they might give us new insights or ideas about how we should move forward with this law when we hear from them.
All right, I want to make sure we get to all our questions. Ms. Whalen?
Oh, yes. Sam, I have a question about the legal representation. Is that for anyone and everyone that is being evicted, or just tenants that are of a certain economic level? I'm not quite sure on what that means.
It's up to people who make up to 200% of the federal poverty line, which is how the law was written in New York City, as well as a lot of other cities and counties that have done similar legislation.
Could you give me the names of the other cities and counties that have done similar legislation?
Yeah, I believe, I could send you some more detailed information, but I believe Baltimore, Philadelphia, I know Washington State recently passed it statewide. Milwaukee County is doing a pilot program right now. There's, I think, about 10 cities. I could send you some more information on that.
Thank you.
Also, that
Newark
rescue,
as well. Newark is interesting because Newark's is a similar size as Albany County. It's about, I think, 290,000 people.
so that recovery relief money that we're supposed to be getting, I thought that was only, you could only spend that on certain things like infrastructure. You're very limited on what you can spend that on. And I don't think eviction relief councils was on the list. Providing tenants who are being evicted with lawyers is on the list. So you seem to be sure that might be something
Well,
that you
no
could
other-
apply that funding to, but I don't think that's correct.
Other municipalities have applied that ARP funding towards similar programs. So I believe that we can do it, but that's something that I'm sure our attorneys can confirm.
The attorneys know, because we just got one disbursement and we're getting another one, and then that's it. What happens when that money runs out? Then what?
Yeah, that's, something we'll have to consider. I'm open, to doing a pilot program as well. I think that, there's a high need right now. Could do it as a pilot program, then we could, address it later. But, again, I think these are good questions. I think these are discussions we have to have, but I also think, right now we're discussing a public hearing, and I think it's important to have that conversation with the public and give them the opportunity to speak to us about it. And again, I think they'll bring different types of insights and thoughts, and probably bring us valuable information that we can then move forward with.
Okay, we have a short meeting tonight and 4 more people with questions. So Mr. Ricard and then Ms. Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just a couple quick follow-up questions, Sam. I guess I'm still a little bit confused why, if the state has the legislation in the pipeline, we need to do it at the county level. And then just to reiterate what Mr. Feeney said, I really can't move this forward without knowing the financial cost of it. Times are tough for a lot of people. The public should have their input, but I just don't understand how we can move this forward without knowing the exact cost of it. That's my 2 questions.
Those kind of weren't questions. Was there a question in there, Mr. Ricard?
Well, I would just like to know why the state, if we're moving forward with this, if the state has it in a pipeline. That is.
I wouldn't say they necessarily have it in the pipeline. I'm not sure what that means. The state has, I think New York State has more legislation filed any year than any state legislature. There's definitely no guarantee that because legislation is proposed that it's in the pipeline to be passed.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cunningham?
Yeah, a couple things. First, we've brought plenty of local laws to a public hearing without having a fiscal impact. So, I mean, come on. This isn't about passing this. This is about hearing from the public. And I agree with Sam that right now there's a lot of angst out there about what's going to happen to folks once the eviction protections go away. So there is no reason why we cannot bring this to a public hearing to hear from the public. Now, once it's on the docket to pass this out for, bringing it to the floor for consideration, fine. Let's make sure we have the fiscal impact so we know what we're voting on. But there is no reason that we need to have that before we hear from the public. So that's point number one. Point number two, while the state may be considering it, we don't know what the state's going to do. We don't know what curveball issues are going to come their way that they may divert attention from this and many other priorities that are in front of them. That's no reason. The fact that they're considering it is no reason for us to sit on our hands and wait for them. And we haven't done that on other things. So why do it on this? And I commend Sam for pushing for this, and there is no reason why we can't hear from the public on this. I would be really curious to hear from folks who are facing this real life pressure point at this particular time, because COVID is not over and there's lots of people still hurting out there.
Thank you, Ms. Cunningham. Chair Joyce?
Hey, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Sam, as you know, our staff has worked closely with you on this for several months, trying to bring this about. Just because we brought public hearings on local laws and other efforts in the legislature without a fiscal before doesn't mean it was right then, and it may not be right now. For me, I think about paid sick days and the unreasonable expectation we set up with the public on that. We had multiple public hearings on it. It wasn't fully baked. And if we move forward with a public hearing, I think we're setting up an expectation that we're moving forward with it when we don't know the costs associated with this. This is not typical of what we've done in the past, given the potential costs related to it. Again, just a rough idea of not only where the money is coming from, but how we're going to pay for it. And the state had already awarded the 25 million. I think it was reported out last week, and I think you mentioned the Legal Aid Society had gotten 4 million. So money is out there, and my question is, and what I'm concerned about, and you made a good point before, Mr. Fine, about okay, the state is moving forward with resources towards this goal, and we could fill gaps. So we don't know what those gaps are yet. There's a lot of unknowns associated with it, and I'm concerned that we're not going to get anything if we go ahead and move forward with a local law or anything saying that we're going to fund it ourselves. I don't want to miss out on that. That's kind of where I'm at. If we just because we moved forward with the public hearings before without full fiscal impact hearings before doesn't make it right then, and it doesn't make it right now. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Kuhn?
Thanks. A couple things. Ms. Whalen asked a question before about eligibility, and the response was, I think that this right to counsel would be limited to people who were, I think it was 200% of the federal poverty line, but I don't think that's the statute. I don't think that's what the statute says. I think the statute says everybody who's subject to some kind of eviction proceeding has this right to counsel. The sort of depth of that consultation that they get with counsel is a function of their income. And if you're at whatever the threshold is, 200% or less, you get full representation. But if you're above that, you get some sort of lesser quantum of representation, like a brief meeting or something like that. So I just want to make sure that that question was answered accurately. The other thing, listen, I've got questions about whether or not, as a governmental entity, we should be guaranteeing a right to counsel to civil litigants, but only on one side of the civil litigation. Let's put that aside for the second, because I don't think we're there tonight. The thing about the fiscal impact, and say, hey, let's go forward with the public statement hearing, without having a fiscal impact. There seems to be some sort of assumption in that the fiscal impact is not relevant to the public hearing, that the people who would be interested in this, who would want to opine on this, they don't care. They're not going to care what the fiscal impact of this is. And I guess I don't buy into that. I mean, I think there's members of the public whose evaluation of the merits of a particular local law, it's absolutely relevant how much it's going to cost and how we're going to pay for it. And they might want to be heard on that subject. And if we just push forward with this thing without that, I think, pretty critical piece of information, I think we're kind of doing a disservice to them, and in that their opportunity to opine on it is not a fully informed opportunity. So whatever we did in the past, as the chair indicated, I don't think that's a best practice, because it's kind of like assumes that the public doesn't care about that, and I think there are members of the public that probably do. So whatever the merits of this are, and I guess we're going to consider it potentially at some subsequent point. I don't think we should put this out for public consumption until basic stuff like that is included.
Mr. Peter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of quick questions. Has there been any consideration about backups in, codes court and eviction courts and things like that, and how this could affect landlords getting paid? So, Sam, what I mean by that is, if someone just doesn't flat out pay their rent, and let's say you're a owner-occupied 2-family, could someone use this as a delaying tactic to not pay and then not pay rent or be evicted for months at a time?
I mean, these people would generally be going to court anyway. So this is for people who are being taken to court for evictions. And currently, if they're there without an attorney, they're not going to.
Listen, let me clarify, Sam.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that if we're giving them free legal counsel, there's no loss to them. And it doesn't matter whether it's a good cause eviction or not, because there was good cause eviction passed in the city of Albany. So someone could not pay their rent, even if they had the means. They would get free legal counsel. And then if it's an owner-occupied building, like someone who is not very wealthy, they would then either have to allow someone to get out without paying rent, or they'd have to hire their own legal counsel to defend themselves.
One thing that I've learned about right to counsel is that it can often be a benefit to both the landlord and the tenant when the tenant has counsel, because it increases the communication. Because if a tenant is coming in and they don't have counsel, there's oftentimes just very poor communication, and the tenant doesn't.
Sam, respectfully, can you? I had a very specific question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. So you're asking if they could.
So if someone had the means but decided not to pay rent, and the landlord went to evict, we would be giving someone counsel, free counsel, even if they had the money to pay rent, but they didn't want to. Yes or no?
If they are income eligible,
right?
Yes, then they'll get counsel.
But the landlord would not.
The landlord would not be eligible for counsel based on this program.
Okay, and are there any outside of New York City or things like that? Are there any other places in New York State that allows this?
Rochester has implemented a pilot program.
So are we implementing a pilot program, or are we trying to do full tilt?
This law is for full tilt, but I'm also open to discussions about, starting it out as a pilot program.
And a pilot program like that's what could be paid for by the state?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the discussion that we've been having tonight, is where we'd pay from it. And if we could get money from the state, that's an option. If we could use ARP funding, that's an option. If we can find money in our budget, I think there's a lot of possibilities, and that's.
But but with the money we've gotten from the state, isn't that technically a pilot program? Like, that's going to
the money that the Legal Aid Society has gotten from the state.
So shouldn't we, respectfully.
I spoke to Lillian Moy from the Legal Aid Society tonight, and what she said, it's great that they're getting this money. It's nowhere near the need to provide counsel to every person facing an eviction. So there still is a need. And I think that's, as we were discussing, where we have to have these discussions and find out exactly how much that need is.
I would respectfully say that, while I'm absolutely for this program in general, I'd like to see how it works out with the Legal Aid Society before we put funding and the law in when we don't know the potential repercussions or the price tag. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, and I'll say, I know that, I personally, I think it makes sense to move forward to the public hearing for the reasons I mentioned before. If the members of this committee are not ready to because of, prefer to have the fiscal impact statement or a little bit more information about the fiscal impact first, I understand, and we can go that route.
Would you rather take a little more time and pull together the fiscal impact?
Yeah, why don't, after hearing from the members of the committee, why don't we table it this month? We can come back next month with a little bit more information, and my hope is that we can move forward with the public hearing, because I think, as I discussed and as Cunningham mentioned as well, I think this is a really important issue that's very relevant, and we need to hear from the public on it. They have, people are very concerned, very scared about what's going to happen when the eviction moratorium ends, and we have to have a plan in place, and it's going to be valuable for us and the general public as a whole to hear people come in and speak.
Okay.
Great.
I appreciate everyone's input this evening. Chairman Joyce, do you still have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to reiterate, Sam, this is a very noble effort that you're undertaking here. I think it's a credit to our body and our process that we're even discussing it, and we're coming forward with options for people that are out there struggling. It's just with all the money and all the resources that are being freed up at the state level, this changes the question for us here in the county. And I think you made a great point before about going into 2022 and looking at what the state is doing and looking at how the county can fill those gaps. I think we need to get you in a position to make that happen. It's just there's too much unknowns at this point. But I just wanted to reiterate, this is a great effort. Staff has worked closely with you over the past several months. We just need to get some iron tight information, ready to present to the public. And I think it'll be a good success for you in the end. We just need to get more information and see what happens in 2022 with the state resources that are out there. So great job.
Thank you, Chairman. Looking forward to continuing those conversations.
Thank you, Sam. So we're tabling then the last item 4 and item 7 then for the time being. All right. I hope the impact statement comes back favorably. I'd be interested to see also any participation from the law school, if that would be of assistance, like they're helping out with immigration issues that have come up. So thank you, everybody. I think that brings us to the end.
Madam Chair,
agenda.
can I?
Yes.
Can I am so sorry to do this, but can I go backward just 1 second and ask a question related to the redistricting amendment? I guess it's for Andrew or Patrick. It just occurred to me as you were mentioning who's the newly elected chair of the group and so forth. Is the money that is attached to this budget allocation, is that going to pay for things like public information, like a website? In the legislation, in the local law that we passed, there was, we bent over backwards to put sort of transparency and public accountability and information flow mechanisms in there, including, and we actually mentioned a dedicated website where you could go and access things like, this is the list of who's on, these are their bios, this is their background, this is the schedule. So I assume that some of what we're allocating is going to build that, but just while I was thinking of it, wanted to ask.
Madam Chairwoman, very quickly, yes, they are creating the website right now. This will be mainly going towards their staff, the demographics, the mapper, and the attorneys. They're getting interns. We're seeking to get interns, or they are seeking to get interns through the Rockefeller College. So everything's moving in the right direction. The website is being drafted with the help of our IT staff.
Thank you. And do you know when we'll be able to sort of see that? The public will be able to access things like a website with all this information.
They're literally working on it as I speak. So I don't have an exact answer though.
Okay, but imminently within weeks, I would assume.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Does that wrap us all up for the evening? If so, may I have a motion?
Motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Feeney. All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
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 Thank you. See you